All right, so today we're talking about percent increase and decrease. So this is one of those things that bothers people, but it really is applicable to the real life. To real life, I want to see what my business is going to change from one year to the next. Did it go up? Did it go down? If it went up, how much did it go up? If it went down, how much did it go down? So that's what we're looking for. So when we look at the percent of change, what we want to see is the percent that a quantity changes, all right, from the original. All right, and that can change depending on if you're talking about 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, etc. All right, and so this is the formula we're going to use. When you see percent of change, what you're going to see is you want to realize the amount of change over the original amount. All right, now when we look at original change, there's actually two formulas. If it's higher, then you take the new amount minus the original. If it's lower, you take the the original minus the new amount. But there's no reason to know because what happens is we're just taking the absolute value. So here's one of those places where absolute value actually applies to the real world. Like, why do I need to know the distance from zero? Because the reason absolute value works here is because I just want to know the change. I don't want it to be positive. I don't want it to be negative. I just want to know what the change is going to be. And that's what's going to help me here. And I can just look at the fact that it's going to be an increase or decrease by looking at it. So when I look at this, it says the table shows the number of hours you spent online last weekend. What is the percent of change in your online time from Saturday to Sunday? All right. So we can look at the chart over here and realize, Saturday, we were online for 2 hours. On Sunday, we were online for 4.5 hours. So what I want now is the percent of change. All right. So I want the percent change. So I want it to be the change over the original, right? Well, from Saturday was my original because that's what we started with. So that's definitely going to be 2. All right. So now I want the change. Now I want the change. So what's going to happen is my change is just going to be my 4.5 minus 2. So I could easily sit there and say, well, is it supposed to be this or 2 minus 4.5? It doesn't really matter because it's the absolute value. So all I want to do is take 4.5 minus 2 and see what I get. So when I take 4.5 minus 2, I'm going to get 2.5. And that's my change. All right. There's my change. Sorry. All right. So that's going to go on top and say, hey, there's my change. So now my percent change is going to be this right here. All right. Now, for my percent change, I want it to be out of 100. So I'm going to come up here and say this out of 100. I want to know what my percent's going to be. All right. So I want to know the percent over 100. So I'm going to come down here and say, okay, what's my percent out of 100? How much did it change? So I can look at this a couple different ways. I could, do the across. I could do all that. So we can look at this and say, okay, how do I get from 2 to 100? And I say, hey, that's times 50. So I can do the same thing up here and say, okay, what's 2.5 times 50 then? And when I do 2.5 times 50, I get 125. So what's going to happen is I get the change 125. So what it means by the change is 125, I went from 2 to 4.5, so I have a 125% increase. Now, let's talk about what that means for a second, because what that means is I had 2 here. All right, so I had 2 on Saturday, I went to 4, so it doubled. All right, so remember what it means by doubling is I have 100% change. So it's 2 and 2 is 4, and then the 25% is I have a quarter of 2, which is going to be that half. All right, and that's where it's coming from. So I have 125% increase of what's going on. All right, and that's what I'm looking for. I want to see how much it changed. All right, so what I want you to do, this may be a little difficult, all right, but I want you to press pause and try example 2. When you press pause, I want you to give yourself, let's say about 3 minutes to see if you can do it, and then watch the explanation with it. So it may give you a little more time, but this is going to be a little bit of a difficulty, but it's the same idea. All right, so comparing these two. So go ahead and press pause and try this example. All right, so what we want to look at is we want to say, hey, the New England Patriots and the Cowboys, who I hate with all my heart. So I really despise the Cowboys. So just wanted you to know that. Anyway, the Patriots in 2011 were at $1.4 billion. And then in 2013, they were at $1.8 billion. The Cowboys, on the other hand, 2011, were at $1.85 billion. And then 2013, they were at $2.3 billion. All right, so we can definitely look at this and say, hey, you can clearly see that the Cowboys, it looks like they're making more. All right, it looks like they're going up more. But the question is not how much did they go up, it's which one had the greater percent increase. So we keep that in mind. So remember, for percent increase, we want to use this formula, that amount of change over the original equals the percent over 100. All right, so for here, my original is 1.4. And I want it to be out of 100. All right. Now my change. All right. My change is going to be that 1.8. All right, minus 1.4, and that's going to be that 0.4. All right. So that's going to be my change. It changed 0.4. So don't. Like I said, don't worry about the order, because no matter what you put in your calculator, it may come negative, it may come positive. We're just going to always stay with the positive there, and then just use the context to see if it went up or not. I mean, clearly we went from 1.4 to 1.8, so it's going to be an increase here. So we definitely see an increase. And so I can say, what's my percent going to be now? I can say the same thing over here with the Cowboys. My original is 1.85, and I want it to be out of 100. And I want the change here. So I can use a calculator or by hand and say, what's 2.3 minus 1.85? And I'm going to have a change of 0.45. Now again, and you go, why are we doing all this? Because clearly 0.45 is greater than 0.4. So there's definitely a bigger increase of the Cowboys. But the question is, what's the percent increase? Is it bigger? And the only way to find that out is to actually do it. All right? So remember, we can sit here and do this. This number times this number divided by this number will give us x. All right? So I can say, I'm using a calculator, 0.4 times 100 divided by 1.4 is going to give me a 28.6% increase. Now I can come over here, same idea, take this number times this number divided by this number. So I'm going to say 0.45 times 100 divided by 1.85, and this is going to give me a 24.32 increase. All right. So now, excuse me, sorry. So now let's recognize that we see a difference here. Here's the important part. Now the Cowboys can say, hey, we grew more than the Patriots grew. But the Patriots can now say, yeah, but our increase is much bigger than yours. We have a 4%, it's 4% higher, so we're getting better. You may be higher and getting higher, but the idea is that we're increasing more than you are percent-wise. So this is just one way you can look at it and say. So my question now is, which team had the greater percent increase? It's the Patriots. All right. Now again, you have a 50-50 chance of getting this problem right, saying Patriots or Cowboys. But the whole point of it is this answer is just Patriots. But this whole work on both sides leads us to this answer, and that's what we're looking for. All right? So now let's look at something a little bit different. We'll just do this one together. So on December 31st, 2013, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at 16,576.66 points. On Friday, February 7th, 2014, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at this. What was the percent decrease? So now we're seeing a decrease. So we're going to see a little bit of a difference here. All right? So I want it out of 100. I want the original. So my original is going to be December 31st. So 16,576.66. And now at the top is I want my change. Remember, this is my change. All right? So I'm going to take this number minus this number in my calculator and see what I get. So I'm going to say 16,576.66 I just typed it wrong. Minus 15,794.08, and I get a change of 782.58. And usually what I'll do with big numbers like this is I'll always do it twice in my calculator, because this is where I make stupid mistakes. So I'll just subtract them twice just to make sure that I didn't do anything wrong. And usually if I make a mistake, I don't do the same mistake twice. And I got the same number again. So it's just a way to check yourself. All right. So again, this times this divided by this will give me x. All right. So I put in my calculator, times 100 divided by 16576.66, and I get a 4.72% decrease. All right, and remember the percent is because I'm out of 100, so this is my decrease. All right, keep in mind again, why is it a decrease? Because it was higher and it went lower. And some of you are like, well, duh. All right, so there's a decrease there, and it does say decrease, but it won't always say that. Sometimes you'll have to determine, like, what was the change in percent, and that's what you have to figure out. So you can clearly see it went from higher to lower, from this date to this date. So it's going to be a decrease automatically. All right, so there's that. So give it a try on the homework, see how it goes, and we'll definitely talk about it. Bring questions. You can see how it doesn't look like it's hard, but there's a couple questions that may just stump you every now and then. But just keep in mind, when you get stuck, come back to these notes. Come back to this formula right here. This is a very important section right here, to keep coming back to that, saying, how do I get that part done? All right.